Hello, my wonderful friends. Megas with you. Have quite a treat for you today. Those of you that follow me know I love Paramahansa Yogananda and Autobiography of a Yogi, one of my favorite books. And I've dreamed about hiking around in the Himalayas, seeing the gurus, and our wonderful friend Chris Bergeson has actually experienced that. And so he was kind enough to share his story with us. So Chris, I was hoping maybe you could just share some of the adventure of it, and then also spiritually what you learned from it, and then maybe at the end of this you could even give our friends some tips and things that they could use in their daily life.
Right. Okay, well, I did go to India in the early 90s, and at that point in time, you know, being much younger and everything, I went with a couple of friends from Sun Valley, and we were trekking in Uttar Pradesh. And so that was a little bit different than what I just recently experienced. But in any case, at that point in time, we were up in the headwaters of the Ganges, you know, so there were a lot of sadhus there, pilgrims. And it, actually, in the culture, it seemed like it was often true that people would, you know, be lawyers or doctors or whatever, you know, merchants, whatever, and then when they're about 50 or so and they've got their family established economically or whatever, they would head to the hills and just deal with their spiritual well-being. So I met some really interesting people. I mean, I met this one guy that had been living basically under a rock for 20 years. You know, in the kind of vein that we were in at the time, you know, which was somewhat, I don't know, I guess I'll call it kind of militant hiking. I was actually painting then, and I did about 25 oil paintings while I was in the Himalayas, and then had a show at Sun Valley that was successful. But, you know, I didn't spend great deals of time with the people there then, and it was multicultural as well, because there were a lot of Tibetan refugees and Nepalese refugees in the towns. So it wasn't just Hindus. And of course, everywhere in India there's multiple languages, so you know, the communication and everything was a little strange. But I had some great experiences of, you know, people that would just invite me into their house, and you know, they're just so gracious and everything, you know, just such really, really wonderful people. So, but what I experienced recently, I went with a friend who I've known for 30 years, and we've been close on lots of, you know, mountain biking and hiking and all of that kind of stuff together. But he was just feeling, you know, seemed to me to have something was different about him. He was just kind of more light and, you know, seemed happier and just kind of functioning, you know, at a high level. And so I asked him what was going on, and he said he'd been connected for several years, well, for a couple of years, with this organization called ECOM, or the Oneness University. And so, as it turned, and he didn't really tell me a whole lot about it. I think he was maybe either wanting to kind of let me just see it in my own terms, or, you know, guard himself from my skepticism maybe, or I'm not quite sure why. Sure. But in any case, you know, he, you know, very kindly, you know, offered to take me over there with him. And so that's what, and I was over there in India just recently for 2 weeks, and the first entire week we went to the temple, Ekam, which, you know, there's a man and a wife, and together they're called Amma Bhagavan. And Bhagavan came out of seclusion and the vow of silence in about 86 or 7 and decided to, you know, try to help the world, engage the world on a very large scale. His son is the one that, you know, kind of actively makes things happen on the material level, apparently. And I've never met either of them. But I went to the temple, which is, it's essentially a concrete core structure that's marble tiled. So it's a pretty amazing looking building, and it's huge. I didn't really pace it off or anything, but it's outside of Chennai. I'm guessing maybe somewhere around 40 or 50 miles out of Chennai, and it's in a rural area. As rural as that part of India gets. I mean, there's some mountains and foothills up near there, where apparently, monks and stuff still hang out in caves. But in any case, this was a meditation regimen. They have places where you stay, and they don't charge for the meditations or anything. They charge room and board, and of course they're trying to bring consciousness to modern man on a large scale. One of their goals, of course, is to create world peace. And the doshas, the people that were the teachers there, were remarkable people. I mean, extremely well educated, really smart, but just so peaceful and serene, and they talk about, their primary assumption is that there is divinity that you can personally access, that you can have a personal relationship with the divine, and they don't ask you to be anything in particular. You can be Christian or Buddhist or a Muslim or whatever, and that's not really the issue. They want you to connect with your personal divine in whatever form that takes, and so that is the their approach to it, and they just talk about all of that stuff just extremely matter-of-factly and consciously, and while they don't address your personal sufferings exactly, they've devised, they take old meditation techniques, mudras and mantras, and combine them with modern psychology and brain research and stuff. So they really have a very effective way of entering the emotional body and getting things to move in you. And so really the what I was involved in there was sort of a very basic, almost I'll call it a kindergarten class of kind of cleaning house, dealing with your past and your frustrations and all the things that you kind of carry in your body. That was one of the things I came away from there that was actually kind of startling to me, is I'm 65 years old and have done construction and been kind of my body was never an issue because it always just worked good, and so I guess I just tended to ignore it. But then now that I've gotten older, aches and pains and hard to move around and stuff like that, and it was remarkable how much of those body tensions and stuff that I'd been holding for so long, probably connected with emotional stuff, just cleared up, after a week of going through these processes that they have, which, that was a real surprise to me, actually. Mm-hmm. I didn't, I don't know what I did expect, but I didn't really expect that.
Yeah.
But it, is true. And then, so this organization, they do things on a really large scale, and they're doing, excuse me, like forest restorations, teaching kids, feeding children, and it's not just in India. It's really it's worldwide, and it was a very eclectic group of people that were there. It was really enjoyable, actually, because there's the large group from China, Japanese, several people from Russia, Australia, Sweden, Switzerland. So really fun, all kinds of languages and different people connecting. But it was really, really fulfilling and moving in a way to sit and meditate, and with people from all over the world, 400 or 500 people, whose only goal was to improve themselves, And so what, they define, they stripped most of the Hinduism out of it. They still use some of the terminologies, and of course they do use some of the old yogic stuff, the mudras and mantras, which are, like hand and body positions while you're meditating, and breathing techniques that really do seem to focus, get a person focused fairly efficiently, and then they have a guided meditation, and so they'll, like, I remember one of them was they, connected with, they asked you to, get in touch with your family members, you know, your mother and your father and your and so that was a really moving meditation, and they are very adept at getting things to happen. And you know, their whole goal really is just, it's not like, well, they define a fourfold purpose in life. You have prosperity, which is something that they want you to have, and then love and the fulfillment of desires, and then contribution, giving something back to society, like it's typical in the meditations. At the end of them, they'll say, well, now that you're connected with the divine and everything, make a promise to yourself to perform an act of love or kindness for someone in need, or contribute generously to a larger cause. And that's, you know, so that's a theme that's repeated, you know.
Yeah.
And so and then enlightenment, you know, so prosperity, love and fulfillment of desires, contribution, and enlightenment. And then in terms of mental states, they have, you know, like suffering state, beauty states, transcendence, and enlightenment. So they kind of weave in and out of each other. Mm-hmm. And you know, they've got some really effective techniques. I mean, it's a pretty amazing thing, and they're spreading out, you know, worldwide, and really trying to make a difference. Just by the things that they do and how they're functioning, I feel like it's a real kind of important cause or whatever, you know, like that they're, you know, I don't feel like they're cultish really, or misguided or anything. It just seems like they're pretty much on track, really.
Well, I remember when we were talking before, something that stuck out to me was you were saying how it's to bring spirituality into the now and to make the world a better place. It's not just running off into the mountains, and right. It's not a selfish thing. It's something to actually change the world and raise the consciousness so that we actually evolve together. Right.
It's not asceticism. You know, it's not going out of the world. They're trying to bring people into the world, and it reminds me, in some regard, of, you know, the way Gurdjieff used to talk, you know, instead of the way of the faker, the yogi, or the monk or something, it's, you know, the way of what he called the way of the sly man, you know, is kind of operating in the world and bringing your spirituality, you know, developing your spirituality within the context of just the kind of day-to-day life that you're living.
Yeah.
And then, you know, like I had a lot of questions. One of the things in my life, because I've lived, you know, kind of, I suppose, unusual life in some ways, and a childhood where I was, you know, pretty much immersed in nature, and I've always, you know, lived in a rural situation, and so anyway, one of the things that I've noticed in my life, especially in recent years, is the denigration and degradation of nature, and it's to a disturbing, you know, effect, because, you know, like I've noticed even at my own bird feeder, there's not like half as many birds as there used to be, and those things are really upsetting to me. But anyway, I had asked this dosha, Kumarji was his name, about that, and he said, well, it's hard to work on things on a big scale like that, and says the first thing you have to do is find inner peace, because that's where everything will ripple out from there. And so there is a time to separate like that. Well, right, and you know, and I can't claim at all to have you know, achieved inner peace, or really even reconciled how that works or what it means, but it makes sense, you know.
Yeah.
Because if you're coming from a place of, you know, depression or anger or something like that, you don't get very good results. Yeah. You know, so, you know, even though it's, you know, in some level it seems like, well, how can that, you know, make a difference? But if you look at what they're doing, you see that it does make a difference, because they're doing it.
Yeah. And it's such a message of hope, as you're saying, all these people from the different countries coming together. This knowledge is going around the world, and it just shows people's hearts. They
Right.
want world peace. They want love. They
Right.
want healing. They want
Right.
to love their neighbor.
Right.
You know, and it gives us hope. And what a beautiful story. And you're a beautiful person,
Well,
and you blessed me with your story.
thank
And
you.
is there anything you could give the people watching right now? Maybe if it's not too personal, maybe the main thing you came away with, and then maybe a technique that they can use in their daily lives.
Well, you know what you should do. I mean, they've got a lot of stuff online. You know, like the meditation techniques. I was there for a week. I don't feel like I'm in a position where I can say, you know, really describe the techniques exactly, because I think you would want that to come from someone who has a little bit more behind them than what I do. But I did come away, even though like I meditated a lot when I was younger, I haven't done that for years, and now I'm reestablishing a meditation practice, and I think that is, you know, the place where it's really good to start, because you know, the main thing is that, you know, instead of just letting life happen to you, you need to apply an intention to what you do. And so meditating is that. I mean, it's a physical, you know, expression of intention. And so I think, I mean, that for me is, you know, it's like, you know, square one, and then we'll see what happens.
That's good. I love it. Well, God bless you, man. I appreciate
God
it.
bless you.
I hope you guys enjoyed that. Love you. See you next time.